It is 6 times up from the bottom. Tan Rabbanon. So it says the Gemara. Tan Rabbanon b'toch shene'emar achbar. So let's remember again in the list of shratzim, the Torah says achbar, a mouse. So shame'ani afilu achbar shebayam shishmo achbar. So apparently Abosai, there is a sea creature that's also called an achbar. So I might have thought that the prohibition, or I should say the categorization of sherets, right, with all of its implications and isra achila, potential tumah, I would have thought that halacha l'maisa, achbar includes not only a land achbar, but a sea achbar as well. So the Gemara says, well, let's analyze this. V'dinhu timei b'chulda v'tilma ba'achbar. So we'll say, for example, a chulda is a sheretz which is tamei, and an achbar is a sheretz which is tamei. Ma chulda, chulda is a weasel. Ma chulda min hagadol ala aretz. Just like a chulda is a creature that grows on the earth. Af achbar min hagadol ala aretz. So I would say the achbar also refers to a land mouse, right? The type of mouse that grows, that lives on land, not the water mouse. So that's on one hand. Or the other possibility is tima b'chulda v'tima ba'achbar. Right? They will say both a chulda and an achbar convey tuma sheretz. Ma chulda kol sheshma chulda. Both say it's included in the category of a chulda. If you're called a chulda, you are a chulda. So just like anything that's called a chulda has the categorical designation as a sheretz chulda, af achbar kol sheshmo achbar. So to also with an achbar with a mouse, I would say anything that's called a mouse, whether it lives on the earth or it lives in the sea, also should convey tumas sheretz. Achbar sheyom sheshmo achbar. So also I say that would come to include even what? Even the land mouse, which is also called the mouse. Talmud lomar al haaretz. So also on the other hand, the pasuk says on the earth, which tells me that what? Only the land achbar has the designation of a sheretz. The sea one does not. I but I ala aretz yachal ala aretz yitma yarad layam lo yitma. But again, if it says ala aretz, I might have thought it's only while it's on the land that it's tamei. In other words, maybe the sea achbar also goes ahead and conveys tumah, but only where? Only on land. Once it goes into the sea, yarad liyam lo yitma. Once it goes down to the sea, it should not convey tumah. Top of kuf chav zayin. Talmud lomar hashoretz. Therefore, we'll say the pasuk says hashoretz. Shoretz means it creeps and crawls. Kol makom sheshoretz. Any place, ultimately, again, where it creeps and crawls, whether it's on earth or whether it's in the water, ultimately, again, it will have tumah sheretz. Oh, eino ella hashoretz. Or we'll say maybe there's a different definition. Maybe hashoretz means what? Kol hamashritz yitma, she'in mashritz lo yitma. Maybe I will say what it means is anything that has offspring, ultimately again becomes tamur tumah sheretz. But if it doesn't have if it doesn't have offspring, it doesn't have tumah sheretz. What would that come to exclude? Otzi achbar shechetziav basar v'chetziav adama. We'll say that would exclude the achbar that we spoke about yesterday, where the front of that achbar ultimately again is flesh, and the back, quote unquote, is dirt, right? Is made of earth. In other words, that it's not fully formed, which apparently, again, she'in para urave, which does not procreate. V'dinhu, I could say the other way, tzimei b'chulda v'tzimei b'achbar. Torah says that the chulda is a sheretz and has tumah sheretz, and the Torah says an achbar has tumah sheretz, and I would say ma chulda kol shishma chulda, just like Rabbi said by a chulda. If it's called a chulda, then by definition it has tumah sheretz. Af achbar kol shishmo achbar. So to by an achbar, I will say by a mouse, anything that's called achbar has the status of an achbar. Whether that achbar lives on the land, whether it lives in the sea, it conveys tumas sheretz. If that's the case, avi achbar shechetzia basar v'chetzia v'adama. And I would include in that what? The achbar that we referenced yesterday in the Mishnah, that the front part is flesh and the back part is earth. So the Gemara says, but if that's the case, okay, lecha l'derech zu. Ultimately, again, or I could look in a different direction. Ma chulda prei revei, just like the chulda has the ability to procreate, and that's why ultimately, and that's the qualifier that allows it to become tamei tumah sheretz. Af achbar prei urevei. So to the achbar ultimately is only going to be tamei to a tumah sheretz if it's a type of achbar that has the ability to procreate. Talmud lomar basheretz. But I will say, therefore, the pasuk comes along and says basheretz. So Amarle was almost finished with this piece. Amarle Ahumi the Rabban the Rava. So there was one of the rabbis said to Rava, but Ema basharetz lasui achbar shechetzia basar v'chetzia v'adama. So ultimately again say that basharetz comes to include even our achbar of the Mishnah, that the front part is flesh and the back part is earth, because after all, it satisfies the criteria basharetz that it creeps and crawls around the earth. To which the Gemara says, Hashoretz kol shehu shoretz vafilu achbar shebayam, and say that Hashoretz comes to include what? Anything that ultimately, again, anything that is shoretz, even that which lives in the water. V'im yishum ala aretz, and if you want to exclude the water achbar because of the phrase al haaretz, so the Gemara says al haaretz yitma yarad liyam lo yitma. Ultimately, again, if it conveys tumah while it's on the earth, would it not convey tumah while it's on land? Would it not convey tumah ultimately when it goes into the water? Amralei ume achar deshavise liyam makom tumah malihacha malihacha. Right, but at the end of the day, if you're going to tell me that the water achbar ultimately conveys tumah as well, then why would we make a distinction between if the achbar is on the earth or the achbar is in the water? The high ala aretz mi baile lahotzi safek tumat safa. But I will say 1 second. We need that phrase al haaretz to teach me something else. That phrase al haaretz, I will say, which we tried to use by achbar, teaches me the concept of safek tumas safa. It's actually a very interesting case. Look at Rashi for just a moment. It's in the short lines of Rashi, probably about 10 lines out from before it gets wide. Rashi says, "Hi ala aretz mi baile lahotzi safek tumat safa sheretz mace saf ala mayim." Well, let's listen to this case. There's a dead sheretz floating on the water, and what's the situation? Safek naga, safek lo naga. So we'll say, I'm not sure. Did I touch it? Did I not touch it? So in general, when it comes to safek tumah, we actually have very concrete laws. What are the concrete laws? Safek tumah b'rshus hayochid sveko tameh, safek tumah b'rshus harabim sveko tahar. That's the general concept. If the suffix is in private domain, it's tameh. Suffix is in public domain, it's tar. We learned that out actually, interestingly enough, from the halachos of sota. They will say the interesting thing when it comes to tuma, that's saf al hamayim, right? If I have a dead sheretz that's floating on the water, and I don't know if I touched it or not, the halacha is about saying af birshus hayachid sveko tar. The halacha with any type of what we call tuma saf, any type of floating tumah, did I touch it? Did I not touch it? Ultimately, again, I will be tahor. Haikra, Rashi says, Nafka lam perak basra de nazir, ksiv hasheretz, komakum sheshoretz, vafilu ala mayim. The ksiv ala aretz, hakitzad, kam b'tumas vadai, kam b'tumas savik. So I'll say, interesting enough, the Gemara says, we need this phrase ala aretz to teach you something very important, which is that if I'm not sure if I came in contact with floating tumah or not, sveko, the suffix, whether it's in Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Hashanah, I will be tahar. That's the halacha. So says the Gemara, I need ala aretz to teach me. Safek tumat safa is going to be mutter. Dam Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi ala aretz lahosit safek tumat safa. Ala aretz teaches me that if there is a suffix, if I came in contact with floating tumah, that halacha lemaisa I am tar. To which the Gemara says, you're right. Tarti al haaretz ksivi. Ultimately, again, the pasuk says al haaretz twice. I will say one to teach me ultimately this halacha of tumat safa, the other to teach me that anything that creeps and crawls ultimately will convey tumas sheretz. Good. So we'll say, so therefore again the Gemara goes back to. So now what we begin to see first of all is we of course hold that the designation of sheretz absolutely applies to something on the land as well as to something in the sea, and as you saw already in the Mishnah, including this mouse, which has these two, the unformed and the formed part of its body. Good. Tanra Abarim. So we'll say the Gemara goes weiter with the halachos concerning sheretz. Hatzav liminehu. So we'll say, so the pasuk hatzav is a toad. So a toad is in the sheretz family. So the pasuk says hatzav liminehu. So the tzav and its minehu and its minim and its type. What does that come to include? Lahavi ha'arud. But we'll say this comes to include an arud. Rashi says, what's an arud? Min hatzav or min hanacha shubah. So we'll say apparently an arud, ultimately, no, we'll say, not to be confused, very often when we use the word arud, so arud refers to like some type of wild donkey or wild mule. That's not the context here. Right? Here's actually what it's arvad. Right? Ultimately, the arvad over here is a reference to the offspring between a snake and a toad. A snake and a toad. So the Gemara says, Lahavia ha'arvad, v'chein hanafilim, v'salamandera. And above this also comes to include nephilim. Rashi says over sheretz min sav, something else in the toad family. and the salamander. I will say, now Rashi says something amazing over here. This is the last of the short lines in Rashi. Salamandera. This is not an ordinary salamander. Rather, Rashi says, Sheretz hanotzar min ha'ar me'atzi hadas aidei kshafim. So this was some type of creature which was created ultimately, again, through fire and myrtle branches, through sorcery. Through sorcery. Now, what's the chap of this salamander? V'asach midamo ein ha'ar sholeit bo. And apparently, again, if you rub this type of salamander blood on you, it's like it repels fire, it makes you fire resistant. Don't try this, but you understand. V'kimon Rabbi Akiva dimine ditzavu. And we'll say, although this obviously is some type of kishuf, miraculous type of creature, in terms of its designation, it is in the toad family. Ukishahaya Rabbi Akiva magia pasuk zeh. We'll say here a little bit of agarata. And Rabbi Akiva used to get to this pasuk. Omer, he used to say, and I will say this pasuk, it's amazing. This pasuk of Hatzav Leminehu. Remember again, this is V'zelochem atame b'asheretz asharetz ala aretz. This is the pasuk, and these are the shratzim that go ahead and creep and crawl over the land. Hacholed va'achbar v'atzav leminehu. These are all right. So when Rabbi Akiva used to get to this pasuk, what would he say? Marabu ma'asecha Hashem. This is a Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva looks at psukim in a different way. He used to read this pasuk and he was amazed. Look at Kadosh Baruch Hu, how incredible your creations are. Why? Yesh lecha brios gedolos bayam, v'yesh lecha brios gedolos bayabasha. We'll say first wide line, 127a. There are some creatures who grow up in the sea. Some creatures who grow up, who live on the earth. Shebayam ilmale olos bayabasha miyad mesos. The sea creatures, if they come onto the earth, they will die. Shebi Abasha, Ilmala Yardos Liam Miyad Mesos. The land creatures, if they go into the sea, they will die. Yesh lechabrios gedolos ba'ar v'yesh lechabrios gedolos ba'avir. There are some creatures who live in the fire and other creatures who live in the air. Sheba'ar ilmale olos la'avir miyad mesos. Those creatures which require fire, if they come into the air, they will die. Sheba'avir ilmale yardos la'ar miyad mesos. And the fire creatures, the air creatures that come into the fire, ultimately, again, if they change their circumstances, they will die. And as a result, Rabbi Akiva said, Marabu ma'asecha Hashem. Look at Kodesh Baruch Hu, how great your creations are. We'll say, by the way, understand the profundity of what Rabbi Akiva is saying. What Rabbi Akiva perceived is Kodesh Baruch Hu did not make the world with creatures that are all the same. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made different types of creatures with different types of identities, who live in different types of places, and by extension with different types of roles. That was what Rabbi Akiva perceived as the Marabu Ma'asecha Hashem. Everything has its place. Everything has its makom. Everything has its role. Rabbi say, if it's true in the animal kingdom, then of course it's true for us as well. Isn't it an amazing thing? Sometimes we think that the goal is to make everyone the same, right? But we know, of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't create us that way. There are different people, just like we look different, just like genders are different. So we'll say there's a variety of things in the universe that have to get done. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu assigns us each our unique and distinctive roles. And the challenge becomes when I try to become something that I'm not, right? When I try to assume an identity or a role that's not mine. We saw this in Chovas HaTalmidim, right? This is what Paro did. Remember again what the Piagetz was saying, that in life your role has to be mat'im, has to be appropriate to you. And if the roles, I'm using the word roles, but you understand what I mean. The roles or the places or identities are somehow mixed up, then the equilibrium of the world is disrupted as well. This is what Rabbi Akiva saw, and it's an incredibly dramatic idea. He's seeing it in the animal kingdom, and through that he says, "Marabu ma'asecha Hashem, ein lecha adam she'ein lamak." Right? We'll say every person has a place, every person has a role, every person has a tachlis. Sometimes we spend our lives looking at what the other is doing, and we spend our lives being mekana, being jealous of the role that someone else has. We have to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, put me in this world for my role, put you in this world for your role. Everyone has their distinctive role, their distinctive responsibility. Stop focusing on the role and identity of the other and start cultivating your own. That's the Marabu Ma'asecha Hashem. Tan Rabbanan. So we'll say the Gemara goes a little bit weiter. Koshi yesh biyabasha yesh bayam. We'll say it's actually amazing. Any creature that you have on the earth, you also have in the sea. Chutz min hacholda, with the exception, of course, of the weasel. So we'll say there's actually an amazing idea that the way that creation works is the sea and the earth are almost like parallel worlds. So whatever type of creature you will find on the earth, you'll also find its sister creatures, so to speak, in the sea. Chutz min hacholda. The one exception to this rule is the weasel. So apparently, again, there is no equivalent of a sea weasel, right? There's no equivalent of that animal in the sea. Rabbi Zera, my cross, this is amazing. So Rabbi Zera says, tell me, what's the pasuk that supports that idea? And once you understand how profound this is, what do you mean, what's the pasuk that supports that idea? It's like everything is in Torah. Everything is in Torah. There is no such thing as any piece of life wisdom or anything you need in life that is not contained in Torah. Sometimes it's explicit, sometimes it's nuanced. Sometimes you could find it yourself, sometimes you have to ask. But hafach ba v'hafach ba dekula ba. Everything is in Torah. So you're going to go ahead and make an assertion that there's no such thing as a sea weasel, that there's no equivalent in the sea. Tell me, what pasuk do you have? And once I get ready for this, it's very exciting. So I'll say, Rabbi Zera says, I'll tell you, ha'azinu kol yoshvei chalad. So let's listen to this. The Gemara quotes the pasuk. Quotes the pasuk from Tilim. Ha'azinu kol yoshvei chalad. So we'll say, ultimately, listen. Chalad means earth, right? Listen, all you who dwell on the land. So as I say, interestingly enough, so chalad is a word for land. Chulda is the name given to the weasel. We're assuming, why is the weasel called a chulda? Well, one of the reasons apparently is because it only exists on the earth, does not have any sea counterpart. So the name itself, chulda, ultimately again is related to Yoshvei Chalad. Incredible. I'm going to have Funa Bridge of Yeshua. So we'll say the Gemara goes weiter. Bivri dinarash einan min hayishuv. So what we're going to get, it's actually very interesting. Bivri dinarash means beavers, which live in the city of Narash. The city of Narash was a city. So we'll say, so if you look at Rashi, Rashi says over here, Bivrei dinarash chayas hamatsuyos ba'osam makom. So beaver, Rashi says, bivrunash. So beavers, right? The beavers of the city of Narash, einan min hayishuv. Rashi says, einan gedelos ela b'mayim. So apparently, again, these beavers in Narash did not live on land. They only lived in the water. Okay, so the Gemara says, Amar Papa, Bishamta Narash Tarbe Mashche Va'alise. So we'll say, now that the Gemara spoke about the beavers of Narash, Rav Papa speaks about the people of Narash. The people of Narash should all be excommunicated. Right? They both say, Tarbe, look, if you look at that Rashi, Tarbe Mashche Va'alise, Hachelev Va'or im Habasar Va'alya. The fat, the flesh, and the tail. We'll say that's a reference to different kinds of people, right? So that means everyone from their oldest to their youngest should be excommunicated. These are bad people. Eretz Shimi Devar Hashem, Amra Papa, Lo Ava Narish Shamad Varshan. The people of Arash do not heed the word of God. So apparently, again, the residents of Narash had some problems. And as a result, ultimately, again, Rav Papa has strong words and they should be excommunicated. Amarav Gidol Amarav Narsha. So we'll say now that we're speaking about people from different locations, we're bringing up a couple of other cities. So Rav said, Narsha, if a person from the city of Narash, right, same city, Narash, Nashkech Mini Kabech. If a person from Narash kisses you, count your teeth afterwards. So I'll say, so obviously giving you a little bit of an insight into the people of Narash. Nahar Pekuda Leviach. So we'll say if a person from Nahar Pekod escorts you, know that he's only escorting you for one reason. Miglima Shapir de Chazialach. It's because he likes your cloak and he's going to look for the first opportunity to steal it. Pumpadisa Leviach. If a guy from Pumpadisa escorts you, Leviach Ashani Ushpizach. Let me read that differently. If a man from Pumpadisa escorts you, Ashani Ushpizach, you probably should change your lodging. Rashi points out over here, because if he knows where you're staying, he will come back later on after you fall asleep to try to rob you. Amar Rav Huna bar Tursa. Pam achos halachti levad. So we'll say another incredible story. Rav Huna bar Tursa said, one time I went to the city of Vad, V'ra'isi nachash shu karoch alat sav. And I saw a snake which was hanging out with a toad. That will say literally means wrapped around a toad. Now Rashi points out over here that Karach alatzav kol shaya hayam matzui etzlo v'haya niskak imo. He saw that this snake and this toad were mating with one another. Liyamim Yotza arvad mi beinayim. It will say sometime later on, Mazel Tov, they had an arvad from between them. Ukisha basi lifnei Rabbi Shimon HaChassid, and when I came before Rabbi Shimon HaChassid, Amrli, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Heim hevi beria shala barasi ba'olami, Af ani avi aleim beria shala barasi ba'olami. So we'll say, so listen to this. So this is actually very interesting. So the arvad, by the way, was known also as a very destructive creature. In fact, again, the bite of an arvad, the Gemara says, is enough to kill a person. So apparently, again, what happens is, so comes along Rav Huna sees this whole thing. He comes before Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon says that the birth of this arvad was a punishment for the people of Vad. Why? Because apparently the people of Vad illegally crossbred animals. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said they illegally crossbred animals, and so as a punishment, again, I'm going to bring about this crossbreeding as well, which produced the arvad, which will become a menace to the local population. I, B'hamar Mar, Kolshe tashmishan v'iburan shava yoldin umegadlin zemizah. V'kolshe ein tashmishan v'iburan shava ein yoldin umegadlin zemizah. But there's a problem, says the Gemara. There's a biological problem, which is how are a snake and a toad able to mate? I was going to say, in general, again, we assume in the animal kingdom, any animals which mate the same way and have similar gestational periods have the ability to go ahead and produce offspring, even if they're not the same type of animals. But animals which do not mate the same way and which do not have ultimately same gestational periods cannot go ahead and produce offspring. Snakes and toads do not mate the same way, nor do they have the same gestational period. So how are they able to produce offspring of an arvad? Amarav, nes b'soch nes. It was a miracle. It was a miracle. A miracle in a miracle. Ultimately, it says it's right, a miracle in a miracle. Says the Gemara, hi paranusu. But one second, this isn't a miracle, this is a punishment. Right? The birth of this arvad is something bad for the local population. So the Gemara says, my nes b'soch nes liparanus. What does it mean? HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought about a miraculous result, but again, this miracle was not to benefit. Instead, this miracle was to punish. Rashi says over here, Nes b'soch nes leparanus kedei lipara min harishoim. Ultimately, again, in order to go ahead and extract punishment or repayment from the rishoim. Okay, I will say, incredible Gemara. Says the Mishnah, ha'ever v'habasar medudalim bebehema. So what's an interesting case? If you have an aver, right? If you have a limb of an animal, or basar, or flesh, which is meduldal. So we'll say meduldal means it is hanging from the animal. So we'll say, what's the case over here? So the case over here is in a situation where either another animal took a bite out of another animal or it got injured. The point over here is there's a limb that's like hanging by a thread. So it's not detached from the animal, but of course it's also not attached. Well, I should say differently. It's attached, but it's hanging by a thread. That's meduldal. Whether it's a complete limb, whether it's a piece of flesh. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Mitamin tumas ochlin bim koman. So we'll say an interesting halacha, which is that piece of flesh or that limb is mitame tumas ochlin. It has the ability to become tamei like a food item, even though what? It is still attached to the animal. Look at Rashi. Hamedudalan babehema. Nitlash mimeno aver basar gidim va'atzamos. O nitlash mimeno basar levado. Va'adayin hein meurin baba miktsas. But so again, the limb is detached. The piece of flesh is detached, but it's still attached a little bit to the rest of the animal. Fine. So we'll say, look at Bim Koman. Rashi says, even though, again, technically speaking, this dangling limb is still attached to the animal, nevertheless, says Rashi, it's very important. If you already had in mind that you are going to give this to an akum, havi ochel, the kabel tumo l'tami acherim. Ultimately, again, that designation to give it as a food item to a non-Jew ultimately relegates it to the status of ochel. Therefore, again, it is makabel tumah for tumas ochlin, has the ability to convey tumah l'tami acherim, the tumas atzman eimen ashiyit l'shu kulan ki debrishis gemara aval makabel tumah men asheretz umetamin ba'es acherim. Fine. So we'll say, so that's halacha number one. Even though the limb ultimately is still attached, if it's dangling, and you have in mind ultimately again that you're going to convey it as a food item to an akum, it contracts tumas ochlin. However, utzrichin hechsher. But Rabbi say ultimately again, in order to be makabel tumah, it requires hechsher, right? Contact with liquid. Rashi says utzrichin hechsher. Lovo b'mayim pam achos la'achar shenedaldulu b'shum mekablin tuma olamis. So we'll say ultimately it requires contact with a liquid. Amud beis. Nishchata behema. If the behema becomes if the animal is shechted, then what? Hochshru b'dameha divrei Rabbi Meir. So we'll say if the animal is shechted, then ultimately again this limb, which is miduldal, this dangling limb, becomes hochshar, becomes ready to be makabel tumah. Ultimately, again, through the blood of the shechit. Remember, again, blood is one of the liquids that makes something ra'ui lekabel tumah. So Rabbi Meir will say that halacha l'maisa, when you shechted, the blood of the shechita ultimately makes this dangling limb hochshar lekabel tumah. Rabbi Shimon Omar lo hochsharu. Rabbi Shimon disagrees and he says no, it is not hochshar lekabel tumah. But we'll see what that machlokis is about in the Gemara. Meisa behema, if the animal dies, habasar tzarich hechsher. So we'll say if the animal dies, this is without shchita, then ultimately, again, the flesh requires hechsher. Rashi says, Meisa be'ema habasar shenedaldal. This is talking about ultimately, again, the dangling limb requires hechsher lekabel tumah. Ha'ever mitami mishum ever menachai. So we'll say ultimately, again, the ever, right, the limb, has the ability to convey tumah. Alts ever menachai. Ve'eno mitami mishum ever nevela div Rabbi Meir. But it does not become tameh, Alts tumas nevela, which Rabbi say. So again, the dangling limb has the ability to go ahead and, or I should say, not has the ability, is tamei alts evram achai, but it does not convey tuma alts nevela. Div Rabbi Meir. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Shimon Matar. Rabbi Shimon says no, it is totally mitar. Rashi, look at Rashi just a moment. Evram matar mishum evram achai. Ki the precious time of the misa osenipo kimosh no fasam achmis. So we'll see this in the Gemara. So last machlokis in the Mishnah is ultimately again status of the dangling limb. So you have Rabbi Meir saying that dangling limb has the status of Evram and Achai, and as we learned before, Evram and Achai conveys Tumah. And we have Rabbi Shimon saying, no, it's totally tar. Okay, we'll analyze all this in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Tumas Ochlin in, Tumas Nevela lo. So we'll say, remember again, the first statement in the Mishnah was as follows. I have this dangling limb from the animal. So what did the Mishnah say? It's Metame Tumas Ochlin, it's Metame Tumas Ochlin, right? So it has the Tumah of a food item. So the Gemara infers from here that what? Tumas Ochlin in, Tumas Nevela lo. We'll say it has the Tumah ultimately of food, but not of Nevela. Remember again, Nevela is an animal carcass. So this dangling limb has Tumas Ochlin, doesn't have Tumas Nevela. The Gemara says, okay, Hechidami. So what exactly is the case here? Says the Gemara. Hechidami. If you want to say that the limb has the ability to regenerate, Safilo Tumas Ochlin, Namilo Litmu, then Rabbi say the dangling limb should not have Tumas Ochlin either. Why, Rabbi say? Why? Because if it has the ability to regenerate, then what? It's a part of what? It's a part of the animal. If it's a part of the animal, remember again, this animal is alive, to be clear. If it's a part of the animal, then it does not have Tumas Ochlin. Right? So the Gemara says, and if you want to say that the bone does not regenerate, the limb does not regenerate, then Tumas Nevela Nami Litmu. Then Rabbi say, ultimately, again, if that's the case, and the limb is dangling, and it doesn't have the ability to regenerate, then essentially what? How should I view it? As detached. If it's detached, then Lamaisa, again, it should have Tumas Nevela. So we'll see here what the Gemara is saying over here. If you tell me in the case of the dangling limb, if the limb has the ability to regenerate, then it should have the status of the animal. If it has the status of the animal, it's not tamei at all. Remember again, living animals cannot contract tumah. If the limb does not regenerate, then halacha l'maisa should be considered as if it's detached, and if it's detached, then halacha l'maisa should have tumas nevela. To which the Gemara says, "V'yidein ma'alin aruka tumas nevela nami litmu." To which the Gemara says, "The olam de'in ma'alin aruka." In reality, we hold Rabbi say that the limb cannot regenerate. V'shayni tumas nevela. So why doesn't the limb become tamei with tumas nevela? To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Dirachmana Amar ki yipol. Because we'll say, interestingly enough, the lashon of the Torah when it comes to nevela is ki yipol min nivlasam ad she yipol. Ultimately, we'll say it's only called nevela when it falls off. If the limb is in any way attached, a little bit of a drasha, because this is not exactly what the pasuk is talking about, so it's a little bit of an extrapolation based on the pasuk. But nevertheless, what we're understanding is when does it become an avela? Only kiyipa, only when it falls off. When it is still attached in some way to the actual animal itself, it cannot contract tumas nevela. We'll see if we look at Rashi. Kiyipa min nivlasam, eino kari nevela, ad sheyipa legamre. It is only called an avela if the limb mamish falls off the rest of the animal. Tanya Namiachir Brisa that supports this. Ha'iver v'habasra hamid bebehema. So we'll say if you have an aver, if you have a limb or flesh that is meduldal. We'll say meduldal means it's hanging, right? It's dangling off the animal. Umu'urin b'chut hasara. And we'll say ultimately again, maybe they're only hanging on by what? By just a hair, like a small thread of flesh. Yachol yitmu tumas nevela. Thought that such a limb should become tamei tumas nevela. Tamid lomar yipol. Therefore, we'll say the pasuk says fall ad sheyipol. It only becomes tumas nevela ultimately when it falls. So we'll say so. Essentially, what the Gemara is saying over here is that halacha l'maisa it's exeris hakasuv, right? Essentially, it's based on a pasuk that even though technically speaking, from a categorical perspective, there should be nevela. Why should it be nevela? We'll say because we're talking about a limb that cannot regenerate, is not really attached to the animal in any type of constructive way. Just happens to be attached in a basic, like anatomical way, but not really in any way that actually functionally connects it to the animal. Therefore, I would say really categorically this is detached, and if it's detached, then it should have the status ultimately again of nevela. Kamash molan ki yipol. I will say the pasuk tells us by nevela, it's only nevela when it falls off. This hasn't fallen off, therefore it's not tamei tumas nevela. But, and I will say here we go. Va'afilu hachi tumas ochlin mitmu. But I will say, interestingly enough, although it will not have tumas nevela, it does have what? Tumas ochlin. So interestingly enough, this dangling limb can be looked at as a food item. Obviously not for a Jew, it's not going to be kosher. But l'maisa, again, for a Gentile, it can be kosher. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, it does contract tumas ochlin. So the Gemara says, Miseile l'Rabbi bar Ashi. And I will say this supports the position ultimately again of Rabbi bar Ashi. Then Rabbi bar Ashi, Amar Shmuel, here we go. Te'inim shetsamku bi'ibehem. We'll say if you have figs which shriveled on their branches. So this is an interesting case. So the figs are actually attached to the branch, but they shriveled on the branch itself. What's the halacha? Tameos tumas ochlin. Ultimately, again, what's the halacha? Rabbi say they become tamei tumas ochlin. Now, Rabbi say now what's interesting about this? What's interesting about this is as follows. In general, when do food items contract tuma? Only when they are detached. Right? Food items, because also think about this. If food items contract to when they're attached, you're going to have a very big problem, which is what? You're never able to eat anything, right? Everything is going to be tummy, because inevitably you can have a sheretz that dies in the tree, a sheretz that dies in the field. So the halacha is food items can only become tummy when they are detached. So now I have a very interesting case. I have figs which shriveled on their branches. So we'll say, which means if they shrivel, then what does that mean? What does that mean? They're really no longer gaining any type of sustenance from the tree itself. But on a technical level, they're still attached. So what does the Brisa tell me? So the Gemara says, Tmeos tumas ochlin, they contract tumas ochlin. Even though they're attached, because they're shriveled, they're no longer really attached to the tree in any type of functional way. Therefore, they're considered as if they are detached, and therefore what? They are metame tumas ochlin. V'atolishman b'Shabbos chayiv chatos. And halacha l'maisa, if you detach it from the tree on Shabbos, you're chayiv chatos. So we'll say, so look what we just did. We just spoke out of two sides of our mouth. We'll say, on one hand, you just told me that they're considered detached, legabe tumas ochlin. Since they're shriveled up, not growing from the tree, therefore they are effectively detached from the tree, and they are mekabel tumas ochlin. On the other hand, what did you just tell me? That if on Shabbos, I take off one of them from the tree, what's the halacha? I'm chayiv chatos. Chayiv chatos for what? For ktsira, for kotzer, okir davar mimokum gidulo. If you detach something from the place where it grows on Shabbos, you are chayiv a carbon chatos, assuming you did it b'shogeg. Rashi says chayiv chatos imo yovshu uktsehen. Now Rashi points out something very important, which is although the fig is dried up, in this case over here, the stem is not dry. Alma afagav dele'inyan Shabbos mechubar ninu metamin tumasach. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here this construct that we just saw before by the Avraham Medulda, which is something could be considered attached for certain things, but detached for other things. So for example, in the case of the dried up fig, the fig is considered to be attached to the tree. Ultimately, again, for Shabbos purposes, but yet detached from the tree for what? For Tumah purposes. Let's bring another support to this. Yerakos shetzimku bi'ibehem. So we'll say if I have vegetables, ultimately again, that have withered up, but they are still attached to their stems. Kigon, hakruv vahadalas, like the gourd, right? Like the gourd, like the dalas, right? So the Gemara says, so ein mitamin tumas ochlin. Ultimately, again, they do not become tamei tumas ochlin. And I will say now, bepashtos, why do they not become tamei tumas ochlin? Rashi says over here, she'ein duhu lav ochal minhu. So ultimately, again, because they're not yet considered food, v'kasaka daitcha duhu gufalo itzich. So we'll say, now what? Okay, let's read the rest of this. So now you have the following situation. You have yirakos. Now these vegetables have dried up while still attached to their stems. So the Gemara says, so what's talocha? Im mitamin tumas ochlin. They do not become tamei tumas ochlin. Now on the other hand, katzitsan v'yavshan. If you cut them off of their stem and they dry out, mitamin tumas ochlin, then ultimately again they do become tamei tumas ochlin. Now katzitzan v'yavshan sachdaitran. Now what does that mean? If you cut them off their stem and you dry them out, that they become tamei tumas ochlin. We'll say if you take a kruv and a dalas, right? If you take the cabbage and the gourd and you go ahead and you dry them out, eitz ba'amu. We'll say they become inedible. If they become an animal, they're no longer called ochel. If they're no longer called ochel, then there's certainly no designation of what? Tumas ochlin. But Rabbi Yitzchak says, no. What's the case we're referring to over here? Ba'al menas liyavshan. We're talking about these vegetables where I detach them from their stem on the condition, right, with the intent to go ahead and dry them out. Now watch this. Time of the kruv udalas. So we'll say, if you look at Rashi, actually, not yet. So, taima the kruv dalasu. So, we'll say the reason this halacha is true is because we're dealing with the kruv and the dalas. Chevan the yavshan, which we'll say are items where once they are dried out, lav bene achilaninu. We'll say once they are dried out, they are no longer considered to be edible. Shar peros, but ultimately, again, when it comes to other forms of peros, mitame, they do contract tumas ochlin. So, what's the case? Hechidami. If both the fruit or the food item and the ukatz and the stem is dried out, so pshita. So we'll say in a case where both, let's say the fruit of the vegetable and the stem are both dried out, then it's clear that what? That halachically they should be considered to be detached, and ultimately again should be metame tumas ochlin. So rather, what do you have to say? Ella lav below uktsehen. Rather, I will say what you have to say is as follows. That ultimately, again, that the ukatz, right, the ukatz is ultimately, the stem itself is still attached ultimately to the fruit, right? The fruit is dried out, but ultimately the stem is not. To which the Gemara says, but that can't be. The olam hein v'uktsehen. In reality, says the Gemara, we have to be dealing with both the fruit and the ukatz. Look at Rashi for just a moment. It's in the wide lines of Rashi, 4 lines in. Hein ele liolam hein v'uktsehen. So we'll say, if you're going to say that we're talking about a case of both where the fruit and the stem is dried out, and you're going to tell me then that at that point in time the food is metame tumas ochlin, but we'll say in reality that's not a chiddush. That's not a chiddush. If the stem is dried out and the fruits are both dried out, namely nothing is gaining any type of nutrition ultimately from the tree, then it makes sense to say that they're already considered to be detached, and therefore by extension that they're metame tumas ochlin. To which the Gemara says, no. What's the case? The katzitzan al menas liyabshan etzrichale. I will say I need it for the case ultimately of where I detach the item with the intention to dry it out. Look at Rashi over here. Rashi said, actually not yet. So the Gemara says, katzitzan al menas liyabshan etzrichale. So I will say if you go ahead and you cut off the fruit together with its stem, or the vegetable together with its stem, with the condition ultimately, again, to dry it out. Even though it is not yet dried out, halacha l'mais, it already contracts tumas ochlin. Tashma, so the Gemara adds in another piece, also with this we'll have to end. Tashma, ilan shenifshach ubo peros. What's another interesting case? If you go ahead and you cut off the branch of a tree, but you cut off the branch ultimately with the fruit still on it, harei hein kitlushin. we view the fruit as if it's totally detached. Look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, Shenafsha, Nitlash Mimeno Anaf, Uba'osa Anaf Yesh Peros. So I cut down a branch, and on that branch are fruits. There are fruits on that branch. So what's the halacha? Harehin Kitlushin. The fruit is considered as if it's detached in totality, right? Even though everything is still moist, right? So it's considered to be detached. And I will say, we know what's the nafkamina for being considered detached for our purposes. The nafkamina, if you're detached, it's mekabel tumas ochlin. Says the Gemara, Yavshu harehin kimuchubarin. I'm sorry. Peros harehin kitlushin. Yavshu harehin kimuchubarin. We'll see if you look at Rashi, Yavshu peros ilin shalom nifchas harehin kimuchubarin. But on the other hand, what? On the other hand, if you have fruit attached to a tree, we'll say this is case 2. So case number 1 is I cut off a branch with fruit on it, and the fruit is still moist, the stem is still good. Nevertheless, it's considered to be detached. And if it's considered to be detached, it's a kabel tumas ochlin. Next case, Rabbi saying, is yavshu, if the fruit is still on the branch, but the fruit dries out on the branch, harehen kimichubarin. Ultimately, again, it's considered to be what? As if it's still attached. So if it's on the tree itself, even if it's yavshu, even if it's dried out, it's still considered to be mechuber. We'll say, what does that tell us? Practically, therefore what? It's not mekabel to masochlin, and of course on Shabbos, if you were to go ahead and pluck it off, you would be chayiv v'chados. My lav. So we'll say, does this not mean matlushin l'chol divreyen, af mechubar l'chol divreyen? We'll say maybe it means just like in case number 1 of the branch, just like we said. Just like we said, it's talush. Talush means it's talush for all purposes, Rabbi say. Talush for all purposes meaning what? That if you were to take a fruit off the branch on Shabbos, you would be pater, and it's mekabel to masochlin. So too in the case of mechubarin, in the case of the dried out fruit that's on the tree, ultimately it's considered to be mechubar l'chol divrei. And look at Rashi. Rashi says, malav af mechubarin, dika amar l'chol divrei karafilu le'inyan tumah. Even for tumah purposes, Rabbi say, if it's dried out, it should not be makabel tumas ochlin. And therefore, again, that poses a shaila to Shmuel, to which the Gemara says, not necessarily. Midei iria, hakidisa v'hakidisa. Not necessarily. Both cases can be reckoned independently. Look at Rashi, hakidisa v'hakidisa, telushin shenifshach, l'chol divrein havu telushin, bein le'inyan chiyav tumah, bein le'inyan Shabbos. So we'll say if you have a branch that was detached from a tree, and that branch has fruit on it, the halacha is going to be those fruit are considered to be detached for all purposes. For Shabbos, namely if you pluck fruit off that branch on Shabbos, you will not be chayiv. And for Tumah it's considered to be detached, and therefore halacha l'maisa, it is mekabel Tumah. On the other hand, Rabbi say, in the other case, but by mechubarin, diktani gabe yavshu, the Shabbos kamar below the tumah. But Rabbi say, bless you, it's quite possible that what? That halacha l'maisa, in the case of the dried fruit attached to the tree, or better stated, the fruit that is attached to the tree but dried out, the halacha is different in different cases. Legabe Shabbos, it is considered ultimately again to be mechubar. Legabe Shabbos, ultimately again, it is considered to be attached to the tree, and ultimately again, therefore if you pluck it off, you will be chayiv. But according to Shmuel, once it dried up on the tree, it is considered to be detached legabe tuma purposes, and therefore again will be mekabe tuma sochlin. So again, I'm about to say what comes out according to Shmuel at least is that halacha l'maisa, when the fruit dry up on the tree for Shabbos purposes, it's considered to be mechuber, and therefore if you detach that fruit from the tree on Shabbos, you'll be chayiv. But for tumas ochlin, once it dries up on the tree, it is no longer considered attached; it's considered to be detached, and therefore is makabel tumas ochlin. We'll stop here.